Good morning. Welcome to Community of Grace. We're glad to have you with us today. My name is Tim Wright. I'm the pastor here. And over the last several months here at Grace, we have been following Jesus through the Gospel of Luke. And we've been looking at various stories from the life of Jesus and some of his teachings that give us some examples of Jesus' use of grace and the reckless grace that he often offered people over and over again. A grace that was so scandalous that it eventually cost him his life. And because we are moving into Easter week, we are going to jump to the end of the book of Luke, and then we'll go back in a couple weeks to where we were. And today we're going to look at some of the events from the life of Jesus, and we're going to do this throughout the service, some of the stories that finally led to his crucifixion. So to set the agenda, I want to go back to a story that we looked at a couple weeks ago. It's a story where Jesus is caught in the act of eating with the wrong kinds of people. And specifically, he's eating with tax collectors. And we talked about why this was so scandalous. Tax collectors were Jewish men who worked on behalf of the Roman enemy, the Roman occupying force. And these Jewish men would collect taxes from their Jewish neighbors to go back to Rome. And oftentimes they would overcharge their Jewish neighbors and pocket the difference. So tax collectors were oftentimes very wealthy by extorting their neighbors. So nobody wanted anything to do with tax collectors. Tax collectors weren't allowed to worship. If you bumped into a tax collector, it would make you religiously unclean. People hated tax collectors. And yet here is Jesus at a party with a house full of tax collectors, and he's the guest of honor. He has just called Matthew, a tax collector, to be one of his followers. Matthew's invited into his house. Matthew's friends are all tax collectors, and there's Jesus eating with them. And by eating with them, Jesus is saying, these people are my friends, and I accept them. Well, the religious leaders were irate. And so they criticized Jesus, and Jesus essentially said to his critics that the reason why he eats with the wrong kinds of people is because those are the people that God loves. Those are the people who have God's favor. He said it this way, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. So I've come not to call righteous people, but sinners. And so in that moment, Jesus turns grace upside down and offers it to the wrong kinds of people, and he continues to do that. And so today we're going to fast forward now, about 3 years later. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem to die for us, and he stops in the village or the town of Jericho. And it's at this point where I need the kids to come on up front because they're going to help us tell the next couple stories. So kids, come on up. And we're going to do a little storytelling together today. We've got some of the kids from the pre-K coming as well. So kids, come on up. Don't be shy. They're moving slow today. They've all been on vacation, spring break, so they're a little slow. Here they come. All right, there's the pre-K. Here they come. All right. Want to make sure they're all here. You guys excited? Easter's coming. Yeah, all right. You'll be where? Seattle for Easter? That's a long flight back to church on Sunday. Yeah, it's all right. It's good. All right, here they come. Hi, guys. All right. Wow, there's a big pre-K today. Yeah, Tim's wife, Miss Jan, is in charge of pre-K today. She's going to need a lot of prayer during this service. All right, guys, how we doing? All right, I want to tell a couple stories, and I want you to help me out. Can you do that? All right, so we're telling a story about Jesus today. And Jesus is in a town called Jericho. Any of you ever been to Jericho? All right, he's been to Jericho. Anybody else been to Jericho? All right, anybody here been to Jericho? All right, so let me remind you about Jericho. There's a story in the Bible where a man named Joshua leads the people of Israel into Jericho, and every day for 7 days they march around the walls of Jericho. On the seventh day they go 7 times and they yell. Anybody remember what happens to the walls of Jericho? Yep. They all come tumbling down. That's right. So that's where Jesus is. And when Jesus walks into Jericho, a huge crowd of people turn out to see him, all right? So I want you to be a huge crowd. Can you come and stand here? All right, I want you to be the huge crowd. All right, huge crowd. Very good. All right, just kind of stand there. There we go. All right. All right, good. Yep, I want you to, oh, yeah, that's good. I want you to stand right there. That's very, very important. All right, okay. All right, we got it? We're good? All right. Do you want to help me today? Huh? You want to help me? You got a big smile. Come here. Come and help me. All right. So the crowd is out to see Jesus. So I want you to cheer Jesus. Can you? Yay, Jesus. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3. Yay, Jesus. Yeah, okay. All right, so they're very excited, as you can see. Now, one of the people in Jericho is a guy by the name of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a bad man because Zacchaeus wasn't just a tax collector, he was a chief tax collector. He was a tax collector of tax collectors. Nobody liked Zacchaeus because he was ripping them off. They didn't like him. Now, what we know about Zacchaeus is this, that he was of Scottish Jewish descent because he was a wee little man. Wow, it's a tough crowd. Okay, so Zacchaeus, the Bible says that Zacchaeus is small in stature, which means two things. He's short physically, but he is small in the eyes of his neighbors because they can't stand him. He has been ripping them off for years. Now, Zacchaeus, come on over here. Zacchaeus is so short that when Jesus walks by, I want you to stand in front of him, all right? Don't pay attention because you don't like him. So when I say Zacchaeus, I want you to boo, all right? Zacchaeus, boo. Can you boo? Boo, all right. So Zacchaeus, come a little closer here. I know your boy and girl don't want to touch the black. Okay, so Jesus is walking by and Zacchaeus can't see. You know, he's jumping up and down and he can't see. And come on, guys, get out of my way. Nobody wants to let him see. So Zacchaeus, anybody know what Zacchaeus does? Climbs a tree. I need a tree. You'd be a great tree, Willie. Let's give Willie a round of applause. Huh? All right. Turn around and face the audience. Very good. Put your arms out in the air. Don't hit the kids. All right. Oh, yeah. There we go. All right. So Zacchaeus, you ready, Zacchaeus? You excited? All right. Zacchaeus climbs up the tree. And he's hanging on the branches. And Jesus walks by. And Jesus sees Zacchaeus in the tree. And he says, Zacchaeus, get down off of that limb. I want to have a party at your house today. I want to have dinner with you. Well, you know what all the townspeople do? They boo him. Boo. They don't like Zacchaeus. They said, why would Jesus hang out with a guy like Zacchaeus, for heaven's sake? And so Zacchaeus gets down off of the tree. All right. Let's give the tree a round of applause. Willie, you can go back. Very good. All right. And Zacchaeus comes out. And after he's had a meal with Jesus, he gets up in front of all the people. I got you. He gets up in front of all the people, and he's been so impressed by Jesus that he says, you know what I'm going to do, folks? I'm going to give you back all the money I've taken from you times 4. Now cheer, all right? Cheer, because he's giving your money back. And I'm going to take half of my wealth and give it to the poor. Very nice, right? So Jesus said, the reason why I ate with this guy is because this is the guy that God loves. This is the guy that is the object of God's favor. And so Jesus said it really this way. He said, the Son of Man came to seek and to save those who are lost. And so that's why he stopped to eat with Zacchaeus. All right, kids, come and have a seat. We're going to tell the next story now. All right, so far so good. So a couple days later then, Jesus walks up the hill about 17 miles to Jerusalem. And when he gets to the top of the hill, the city is over there. He's got to go down a hill, through a valley, and then up to the gates of Jerusalem. He gets on a donkey. And he rides on that donkey down the hill and then back up again. And people are waving palm branches at him, hailing him as king. Now, this is another act of grace, because a few days earlier, Pontius Pilate had ridden into Jerusalem, and he was riding on a beast of war, which would be what? A horse, all right? And he's surrounded by all the military might of Rome, all the soldiers. And he's walking in, essentially saying, Rome has the power. We are your oppressors. So when Jesus rides in on a beast of peace, when he rides in on the donkey, he's essentially making fun of the Roman Empire. And he's saying, I'm the new Caesar. I'm the new king. And I've come to win the world not through violence or war. I have come to win the world through grace and ultimately through his death and resurrection. So just as he had a party with Zacchaeus, now Jesus rides into Jerusalem and has a huge party for the whole city. We call it Palm Sunday because people wave palm branches at him. So here's what I want to do. I want to give all the kids a palm branch. Can we do that? All right. The kids are going to go over there and get a palm branch. All right. And I need a donkey. I need it. Willie, Willie's already been a tree. Michael, you would make a great donkey. Yeah, your family thinks you'd make a great donkey. So come on up. Let's give him a round of applause. Michael's going to be a donkey. And I'm going to be Jesus. I'm going to ride on your shoulders. All right. No, we need, I need to have somebody else. I need to have somebody else be Jesus today. Who wants to, Judah, would you like to be Jesus? No? It's my grandson, for heaven's sake. Yeah. Would you be Jesus if you rode on my shoulders? No? You don't want to be Jesus at all? All right, I got to see who else. Anybody here want to be Jesus who's a littler person? Got to be, because he's got to carry you. All right. Oh, we're just going to pretend you got somebody on your shoulders today.
I can
all right.
carry him.
Carry who?
Him?
This guy? Yeah. On your shoulders?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Look at all these parents are saying no. Here we go. All right, we're going to try it. There we go.
You want to do that?
Yep, there we go. All right. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. There we go. This is a 6-mile walk you're going to do right now. So here's what I want you to do, kids. We're going to do a Palm Sunday celebration. So you're going to follow the donkey and Jesus, and they're just going to walk up and down the aisle. Just hang on a second. I try this every year. I haven't had any success so far, but they threw down not only palm branches, but they threw down coats, which is another way of symbolizing honor. So guys, if you could just take your shirts off. No? Wow, it's a tough crowd. Okay, so the band's going to sing for us. When they get near your area, I want you to applaud, because this is a party. This is a big celebration for all of Jerusalem. The king is in town. Let's go. So as soon as Jesus gets into Jerusalem, the first thing he does is he heads to the temple. The temple is the place of worship for the Jews. It is the place where the Jews believe that God is present. And when they walk into the temple, the first place they walk into is the outer court. And the outer court is the only place where non-Jewish people were allowed to go to worship God. It was the only place where the Gentiles could go. So that was their place of worship. The problem was that the Jews had turned it into a bazaar. It was there that they sold the animals for sacrifice so that the Jews could take those animals into the next part of the courtyard and begin to sacrifice them. See, if you were traveling from Galilee, it'd be a 2 to 3 day journey. You wouldn't want to bring the animals with you, so you would buy them there. Oftentimes they had money that was not the kind of money they wanted in the temple. It might be Roman coins or from some other pagan country, and so they would exchange their coins so they could bring in good coins into the temple. So this place that was meant to be a house of prayer for the Gentiles, for non-Jewish people, had become a bazaar filled with all kinds of animals screaming and people bartering. There was not a place for worship. So when Jesus walks in, he's absolutely outraged. And he picks up a whip and he begins to chase out the money lenders and the money changers and the people selling the animals. And he says that the outer court is a place of worship for all people. That even the Gentiles are objects of God's grace. Now the Jews would have been absolutely furious at that comment. They believed that they were the objects of God's wrath, that God cared only about the Jews. And here is Jesus, a Jewish leader, taking a stand for those who are outside the Jewish family, saying they belong to God, they belong to God's grace as well. He once again turns grace upside down. And finally, the religious leaders had enough. And they began to put together a plot so they could do away with Jesus once and for all. After 3 years of scandalizing people with God's reckless grace by choosing the wrong kinds of people, eating with the wrong kinds of people, healing the wrong kinds of people, the religious leaders had had enough, and they put together a plot to get rid of Jesus. They convinced one of his followers, a man by the name of Judas, to betray Jesus, and Judas agreed to do it under the misguided belief that if he forced Jesus' hand, if he could get Jesus to act like the Messiah, that Jesus would be the Messiah they all wanted him to be, that he would rally the people of Israel, they would defeat Rome, they would kick them out, and then Jesus would take his rightful place as the King of Israel. But Jesus had no intention of taking over Israel in that way, of winning the world in that way. He knew that the only way to win back the world was through his own death and resurrection. So he knew that his time was short. And he decided before he went to the cross that he would have one last meal. Another scandalous meal, another meal where he turned grace upside down. Once again, he's eating with the wrong kinds of people. This time, his followers, men and women who he had chosen, men and women who had decided to follow him, but they were the wrong kinds of people from all the wrong kinds of life. They celebrated together at that time the Passover meal. And the Passover meal was something the Jews celebrated every year at that time, where they commemorated that moment in the Old Testament when God rescued the people of Israel from slavery in Egypt under the leadership of Moses. In particular, the Passover meal commemorated that moment at the end of the epic struggle between Israel and Egypt when God's angel passed over the country of Egypt, spared the homes of the people of Israel, but left death in all of the homes of Egypt because he wanted finally to force them to let his people go. And so that was the meal. That's what the meal was about. But when Jesus sat down at the table, he transformed that meal. He made it into a gift of grace, not just for his disciples, but for us 2,000 years later. He began by taking bread, and he broke it, and he gave it to his disciples. He said, "Take and eat. This is my body. It's broken for you." And then he took the cup. There was wine in it. And he held it up. He gave thanks. And he said, "This is my blood. It's poured out for you." Now, for 3 years, Jesus had given of himself completely to the people of Israel. He gave himself physically by touching people and healing them. He gave of himself emotionally by taking in the hurts and the pains that he had experienced as he moved around the people. He gave of himself spiritually by teaching people about God and by offering grace to people. And Jesus wanted to make sure that for thousands of years later, he would still be present with us, that he would stay connected to us. And so he said, "This is my body, and this is my blood. I'm still here, and I'm still here for you." And so 3 years earlier, he had a meal with the wrong kinds of people because he wanted them to know that they were the object of God's grace and God's favor. 3 years later, he ate with the wrong kind of person in Zacchaeus to let people know again that the wrong kinds of people were the people that God loved. And that it wasn't the healthy, it wasn't the good that Jesus came for. It was those who were sick, those who are lost. And in that final meal, Jesus wanted to say one more time tangibly that God's grace is always for the wrong kinds of people. For people like you and for people like me. And that when we have this meal together, Jesus is really here. He is really present to bring all of the grace of heaven into our lives. And so as we eat this meal today, Jesus says to you, "I have come to call you to follow me. And I have come to find you wherever you are to offer you life." And so come down off of the limb of that tree and join the party. This is my body. Eat it. This is my blood. Drink it. All is forgiven. Follow me. Let's pray together.